fact that you guys about it, or if we do talk about it, then sometimes that makes us less of a good Christian, or maybe we weren't praying enough, or we weren't doing all the right things. And so for someone like myself, I grew up with a parent who had a severe mental illness. However, my grandfather was the pastor of the church. Thank you, Jesus. So he was my saving grace. But as a child, I grew up thinking mental illness equals bad, right? I kept thinking, if you have anxiety, you have depression, you have addiction, you must be a bad person, and you're just not praying enough. You're not doing what you need to be doing, right? So then I found a lot of refuge in the church ever since I was a young one. And my teen years, my youth pastor actually had death by suicide. So thinking about really now, I'm confused. I'm so confused. Like, this was a godly man who also had a mental illness. So fortunately, I kind of powered through that, kept my faith. I went to a small private Christian college out of Missouri, studied psychology there, and continued. I was telling Pastor Bones, I thought I was going to go into ministry like my grandfather, went to seminary for 1 semester and dropped out. Realized that was really hard, and that was not where God was leading me. But fortunately, he did lead me into another area of ministry, which is being able to be a Christian in the mental health care field and being able to make connections with people. So today, yes, we are talking about mental health, and I didn't go too much into marriages and so forth, but really my goal is, one, let's break the silence about mental health with our families, within the church, within our communities. Because what we know is until we really start focusing on treating mental health and knowing how to help people who have mental health conditions, whether that's your child, your sister, your mother, your spouse, until we start recognizing that, we're really not going to be able to have good, healthy relationships. All right, maybe I need help. Let's see. He turned it off on me. This way? That one? There we are. All right, so that's a little bit about me. I kind of shared my story. Yes, these are my 2 boys. My oldest is Jaden. My little one is Isaiah. I'm very, very thankful to this church. They have been coming to the literacy camp for, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years, and I am so thankful. Well, I'm thankful to this church that for a couple of reasons. Clearly, my children do not look a whole lot like myself, and they were able to come to this church and to see people that look like them as well and doing some great, powerful things, and some really godly people here. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I'm going to skip over this one for right now. I'm going to share this little video with you, if you could share that on YouTube. And I'm going to get out of the way. How do you get out of the way with 2 screens? Yes. Yeah. So when I saw this, it was quite powerful. Oh, we don't have volume. He's trying so hard.
Something that's extremely important to me. Hi, I'm Yolanda Blackston, and I live in Maryland. I am the daughter of a pastor. My father-in-law was a pastor, and my husband is a pastor. So you can imagine my faith and spirituality is something that's extremely important to me. But one of the other things that I identify with is my mental illness. I live with major depression, generalized anxiety, and ADD. There was a time that I was fearful to disclose my mental illness because of my faith. Several people have the opinion that if I prayed hard enough, I would be cured of all of my sinful diseases. But that's not true. So I came across NAMI. NAMI is a wonderful organization. And what they taught me was that my mental illness is not a character flaw. It is just my makeup. I have brown eyes, brown hair, and I happen to live with several mental health disorders. So with that, it helped me reframe my understanding of the church and mental illness. My belief states that my God is not offended by me seeking therapy. He's not offended by me taking medications as needed for my mental health conditions, just like he's not offended by me taking medication for high blood pressure, which I also have. So I don't feel like it's a slight, and I want to encourage people of faith to reach out. There is no shame in reaching out to a mental health counselor, a therapist, a psychiatrist, even going to your primary care doctor and sharing your concerns. Our faith teaches us that we should live an abundant life. So I believe in seeking treatment. It helps me to live an abundant life. And I'm very thankful for NAMI for helping me in my journey to wellness.
It's really hard to bond with until they're able to get the treatment that they need. And another big reason why we need to talk about this is because death by suicide, third leading cause. People are leaving their families, their small children, due to addiction, an overdose that wasn't needed. And that all falls underneath death by suicide. And one of the other biggest statistics that I found on here, and I was watching a bunch of different videos, and again, speaking about relationships, a lot of the times, it's usually African-American males, 63% have the idea that if they have some kind of emotion, that this is a sign of weakness, or I need to suck it up. Be a little bit stronger, you can't cry, or they're afraid to tell their spouse what's going on because now I won't be the man of the house. Now I'm not the strong one that you can seek refuge to. So I found that a really, really interesting statistic there. I have a feeling you're turning these for me, aren't you? Yeah. Okay. All right. So speaking about, kind of three of the bigger mental disorders that I kind of want to talk about and how these do impact our lives, some of the symptoms that you may see. Anxiety disorders, we're still in a pandemic. Like, everyone's lives have changed. I mean, drastically. I mean, from the fact that some people are scared to death to go back to church, right? I mean, my church is like, there's like 5 of us there. It's like, hey, from the corner. People don't want to drive anymore. Have you noticed that maybe people in the community aren't as friendly as they used to be? They're not as patient. There's a lot going on, right? Oh, no. Oh, for sure. For sure. I had several, I've been in private practice for the last 3 years. And over this last year, I can tell you that I had to work more hours because I couldn't fit in all the people that needed to be fit in. And within our community, a couple of the biggest mental health practices shut their doors immediately. So now we're in the middle of a pandemic. There's few providers, and people are hurting and struggling. So now what do? We self-treat. Because if you didn't have God already in your life, and you didn't know where you could go, and you were already struggling, alcoholism is increased, drug relapse, right? Our prison systems and our jail systems now became our treatment facilities. Doesn't seem so great to me, right? The other, depression clearly is the other one we're going to talk about. And the other one's going to be PTSD, because most of the time, those are those silent scars that people don't talk about. And sometimes those symptoms really start to come back 50s, 60s, 70s age group. Oh, that's the video that's not going to work. So this video is talking about the signs of depression. So let's say over this last year, you've noticed all of a sudden your husband doesn't want to eat the same food anymore, a little bit more groggy, maybe doesn't want to hang out with you as much as he used to. Hey, do you want to go see the kids play a ball game? No, I don't want to see them anymore. Right? Like, I'm not going to do that anymore. I want to just be over here, be by myself. I don't want to deal with anybody else. Right? But it's happening, right? But these are all signs of depression. This is really what's happening to people. Or we have, I can't go to sleep. So insomnia. I'm laying in bed and can't go to sleep, and then I'm waking up early in the morning. These are all signs of depression. But when you're not sleeping, that has a huge impact on your health. But also when you're not treating the depression, once you see the signs and you know what's going on, and that doesn't always mean medication, at that point, that's actually putting a toll on your family, because your family's living with it now, right? So once you know that there's a problem or someone's talked to you about it, you got to kind of start working with it, because that's your responsibility, because there are things that we can do to help that. I have a feeling you're following me. There we go. All right, so let's also talk about some anxiety disorders. Biggest in all the United States. And if somebody ever tells me that they've never had anxiety before, they are clearly not in touch with their inner being, right? That is not true. And so sometimes we can have a little bit of anxiety over something that we're looking forward to. But when it comes to a point where we kind of a worry word, right? So if it's at a point where we're constantly worried about something all the time, we'll kind of go to the next one with the symptoms there. So let's say, someone's constantly having, it's super tense. Maybe it's with driving through the tunnel or driving here in Hampton Roads. Maybe it's about what's going on with your kids or your own health. But when anxiety completely takes over who you are, that's a point that we need to go ahead and get treatment. For women, mostly women, usually, especially my ER rotations, I'm having a heart attack. I'm having a heart attack. You're not telling me anything different. I'm sweating. My arm went numb. My heart is pounding. I know I'm having a heart attack, right? But then also let's relate this back again to our relationships. If we're constantly worried all the time, then clearly our loved ones are worried about us too. Our loved ones are worried about us. They see what's going on with us, right? So if we're constantly feeling this way, not only are we already uncomfortable in our own skin, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're making everyone else a little bit more uncomfortable too. Fair enough. Oh, go back one. There we are. All right, so panic disorder is getting kind of a special shout out in mental health for me, because this is one that most people actually can't help. This is an actual physiologic response that comes over. There's a portion of our brain that neurochemicals begin to start flooding, and people actually have a wealth of physical feelings throughout their entire body. Some people have known to go through paralysis because of it, because that is how powerful the brain is, right? People can lose memory, many different things, but the key word here is it's debilitating. It can totally take over somebody's life. And now, what if that's a mom that has a couple little kids that she needs to take care of, right? And then we see that she's neglecting them, and all of a sudden we're like, man, she's a bad mom. She needs to step up. What's going on with her? The kids don't have clean clothes on right now. So again, important that we're looking at people's symptoms, we're crowding around them, and we're loving them. So a lot of the times people think sometimes that people have anxiety disorders or depression, that maybe they kind of did it to themselves or they were asking for it. But the reality is the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So most of the time, especially even whenever I do my screenings with people, almost every single time I say, who else in your family has these symptoms? Who else experiences some of these things? Because what we do know is that there is a genetic component to this. Now, the other part that we know is constant stress, which is what a lot of people have been going through, especially this last year and a half. We were having a small conversation of what his life was like since he came back from DC. And I was like, whew, that was a lot, man. But he's like, God is good. God is good. But when we're constantly under stress all the time, whenever we have a community, maybe we're worried about, Pastor Jones, you were talking about having a financial seminar, which is a great idea. But when we're constantly worried about, are we going to be able to pay our bills? Do I get to keep my job? Am I going to get COVID? Is the person behind me in the grocery store too close? Can I get the right? Oh, you know that's the truth. You know now when you're at the grocery store, you're looking behind and you're like, that was not 6 feet. You know that's the truth, right? Like we are, like, I definitely, I have to admit, even myself, beginning of this pandemic, I'm one of the fortunate ones because of my line of work. I was able to get vaccinated very early on. But before, I was the same way. I was like, hi, I'm trying to be polite, but you need to step back like 3 more feet. Like, this is not okay. But all of us, all the time, having that constant stress, having that constant worry, absolutely plays a toll on our health. And what that really means physically for our bodies, we have what are called our adrenal glands, and they begin to be overworked. And when they become overworked, that's impacting our heart, right? That's impacting glucose levels, that's impacting blood pressure levels. And again, like, we want to be healthy overall, to be the best person that we can be for our loved ones. So again, let's talk, this one has a good video. You can go to depression.
Work, eat, play, sleep, and get out of bed the next morning. Seems simple, but if you're one of 25 million individuals in the United States living with major depression, sleep isn't always so easy. Neither is navigating your daily life free of guilt or hopelessness, or having the ability to enjoy time out with friends, make simple decisions, enjoy hobbies, or go to work. Major depression is the leading cause of disability across the United States, and without treatment, the frequency and severity of symptoms tend to increase over time. However, there is hope. Major depression is treatable, and there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Today, there are a variety of treatment options to choose from. The key is to get an evaluation and find a treatment plan that is right for you. Free education, Information and support programs are available. You are not alone. We can help.
So I won't ask anyone to raise their hand, but think about the person in your life that's ever said, you know what, or even in the women's ministry, like I have a lot of women who all of a sudden now said, like, I don't want to go to Saturday morning tea anymore with the people that I used to spend time with. Or, thinking about changes in appetite, changes in their demeanor, the way that they spend time with their family members, like that's depression. But we need to rally around those people for sure and help them with the best that we can. So again, thinking about your loved ones, especially over this last year, because sometimes people don't know that they're depressed, if that makes sense. So we may be able to articulate what these symptoms are, but sometimes they can't even articulate how they're feeling because they're feeling so low and so bad. And so if we can be educated to know what the signs of depression are, then maybe we can capture our loved one. Maybe we can help them, right? And I kind of have a theory that if we were treating baseline health conditions the way that we should, we might be saving some marriages too, right? We might be saving, maybe our divorce rate wouldn't be as high as it is if we were starting to learn and to love and to accept the people that we married, but then also allowing them to be who they are and allowing them to have the treatments that they need. So again, the symptoms we have are changes in sleep. That can be too much or too little. Changes in appetite, too much or too little, right? People go either way. Some people eat their emotions, some people don't eat at all. And usually that lack of concentration, so maybe that's your loved one where you're just like, hey, are you listening to me? Like, I thought that's what we were talking about, and you're not paying attention to me anymore. Like, what's going on with you? Are you there anymore? Right? And then that may be the person that used to be bubbly and full of energy and was running around and doing this, that, and the other. And now you all of a sudden, like, your loved one doesn't want to do anything at all anymore, right? So again, what causes depression? A million things, an absolute million things. This can be from trauma, things that you've been through or things that you've seen. And then when we go to get into our marriage, right, trauma comes with us. We didn't leave it behind, right? We didn't just say when we said I do, we were just like, yeah, that's good. We're brand new. Let's go do this. That's not how it works. We bring it all in, right? We bring in our genetics. Again, yeah, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Our life circumstances, again, what's going around here. And one of the biggest, actually, that people fail to realize are brain changes. So let's talk about that for a second. So I've had an opportunity to work in the cognitive program over with Centera and got to look at a lot of brains. It's really interesting. And what we find, actually, it's about our 50-plus population. So anyone who's had a long history of uncontrolled diabetes, whether you've been a smoker, whether COPD came along, right? Maybe that was a lot of exposures to different chemicals due to the type of job that you had. Untreated sleep apnea, which is a lack of oxygen that goes to the brain at night. That's your loud snoring significant other. All of those things actually over time can cause changes on the brain. So these are called microvascular changes, these little bitty vessels on your brain. And over time, due to those changes, your brain actually changes. So now, yes, sir?
So how did you guys working with Centera and the cognitive usefulness?
Yeah.
How soon does CTE?
That's usually, so that's still within theory,
Right.
if I'm being honest. But in my personal experience, I've seen it. I had a soccer player. He was a soccer player for a Mexico team, and family brought him to me early 50s. Yeah. I don't think myself nor my colleagues, I don't think I've seen anything lower, anything younger than that. However, what I have seen is a condition called FTD, which is called frontal temporal dementia. There's many, many different neurologic brain changes that present like psychiatric symptoms. So I'll have people bring their dad to me and say, like, he was the most godly man, actually, top of my head, a local pastor down by Western Branch, was in ministry for 30 years, wonderful man. His wife, who is just mortified, brings him to me and she's like, he just cussed out the entire congregation. I had to resign him. I had to pull him from the pulpit. Like, I don't know what's going on. I'm totally out of character. He end up taking all the money out of an account. Like, she's like, I don't know what's going on with my husband. We did a brain scan and found out that the front portion of his brain had atrophied, which means that the tissue had become much, much smaller. So that's a clear example sometimes when people have changes and they've never had a history of mental illness. That's a clear sign that there is a brain change that's happening. Another big thing is baseline medical conditions. One of the biggest is a thyroid condition. So a low thyroid sometimes, especially in my women, can cause weight gain. It can make them a little bit more tired, more irritable, sleep problems, and so forth. So baseline health conditions can certainly cause depression as well. And at the bottom of that list, but also incredibly important, is drug and alcohol misuse. And here in our community, there's a huge, huge, huge problem. And I'm seeing it more and more and more again, that even with the use of different psychedelics, but what happens is that changes a portion in the brain, and that can make someone actually feel like they have symptoms like schizophrenia for the rest of their lives, even if they've stopped using the drugs. So that's a big thing in our community. The other one that I said we were going to touch on was PTSD. And PTSD is so big here in our community, again, because we have such a huge military presence. How many prior military do I have? About right, right? So at some point in your career, you were trained and you had to be put in a position where you had to be hypervigilant. You had to be very on guard, like you had to be there, and you had to totally take away anything that could make you feel like you're safe, because you have to be there, you have to be on guard, right? But later on, that's good while you were there because that kept you safe and probably other people. But that's really hard to eventually turn off over time. But PTSD isn't just with our military folks. We see that in our healthcare providers, right? We can see that from car accidents. I've seen it in teachers, right? All of the above. We can see it in many different communities with violence that's occurred. And it's the concept of this hyper awareness of what's going on. But over time, people can get these increased startles. So if you think about it, you go and, well, maybe that's uncle that you couldn't go in there and say, hey, what's going on, right? Because maybe then that was the uncle that would completely turn around and would jump really, really fast, right? That startle type response that could be going on. But the other thing is this hypervigilance. So constantly needing to lock the doors, making sure that the kids are safe in the bed all the time, looking through all those things. So those are very, very telltale signs of PTSD. Nightmares, clearly. So sometimes, a lot of the times, it's usually not even the husband, it's the wife that brings the husband and says, I need you to do something with him because he's waking up at night and screaming and he's scaring everyone else in the room, right? But again, sometimes they're not willing to kind of talk about it, and it becomes pretty frustrating. So there's a really good resource if anyone has anyone in their life, and it's for families. That one wasn't me, right? Okay. And so it is for families, and it's completely free, and it's called Homebase. Homebase offers completely free resources for families. They teach families about what the symptoms are for mental illness, especially PTSD, that's where they focus on. But they actually focus on families to help them know how to help their loved one as well. And I've had a couple of my patients go through their program out in Boston, and it's absolutely phenomenal. It was completely just changed people's life. One of the other statistics that I found on here was that women, which really we don't think about so much, but women experience PTSD much higher than men do. Even though a lot of the times we think about PTSD as a male disease, right? Like if we're putting labels on things. Absolutely. Please do.
Because, growing up in a city environment,
Yeah.
not only did my mother and my auntie, they had hypervigilance
Oh.
all the time walking around in the city. And even to this day, my wife will say, why are you so aware of your surroundings? Every time you go to a big city,
You're trained to do that.
you're naturally trained
Yeah.
to know your surrounding environment,
Yeah. Where's the threat?
Exactly.
I'm looking for the threat. There's a threat coming, and I need to be on guard because I need to make sure that whatever that unknown threat is, that I'm ready for it, I'm looking for it, and I'm going to protect my loved ones.
Right, at all costs.
At all costs.
And I think it's just, it has never been discussed, at least growing up in Detroit, one of my friends, that's what they were dealing with the entire time. So
Yeah.
PTSD, hypervigilance.
Huge.
When you took the city bus, whether you were walking home after school, you had to know what neighborhoods that you had to move quickly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What city did you grow up in?
Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, yeah, got it. Yeah. Yeah.
But now moving here to Virginia Beach, my daughter has
Right. The threat's not so much there, but it can be.
But every time we go to a major city, whether it's New York,
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia, DC, that hypervigilance.
And you're probably bringing the family in. They don't get to walk by the street. They need to walk in on your side so that you can protect when they come. It's all those little things, right? It's whenever you're on the bus and you're making sure that you can quickly get off, right?
Every single person on the bus.
You know what they're wearing. Absolutely. Yep. So that is that hypervigilance. And sometimes we can find that it's okay, it's that okay to be safe, right? But then I don't mean to call you guys out, but then also for your wife, sometimes it's kind of like, this is annoying. Like, we're okay. Like, there's no threat here. Like, what are you doing? Right? because she didn't grow up with that. Like, she didn't see that. But remember when we got.
She doesn't understand why I'm over changing her.
Right, because you love her and you want her to be there, right, and protect her. And because you've seen a threat. But thank goodness she hasn't, though, right? Thank goodness, like, she didn't have to see those threats and have to feel that way. But from her perspective, she might get a little annoyed because she can't see what you see or feel what you feel. But absolutely, those are absolute symptoms. Absolutely, for sure. I pulled this slide off of the NAMI's interfaith site that they have, and I have some pamphlets out there in the back. And really what they were talking about is, which I think you guys are already there, is integrating mental health into the church and having that conversation and really breaking that stigma. And so a few of those things that they talked about is if we want to talk to people in the congregation, or if they come to you and say, I've really been struggling with X, Y, and Z, like, these are some key things that maybe we want to avoid, so then they will go and get the help that they need. And so a few of them on there is, you don't have enough faith. You just need to trust in God. How about you have faith? Let's pray together right now. But also, let's go ahead and get you a few resources if you need it. Because one of the biggest things that we see is that Christians are the least likely to get help. Absolutely least likely. I have been so fortunate that I've had two local pastors that are underneath my care, and I'm thinking, God, what are you doing? Like, well, hold on. Like, I'm working with the pastor. Like that had to really help me kind of break some barriers. And then I'm like, man, isn't that a strong leader? Look at that. I was like, what? This is absolutely amazing. But again, we really have to start breaking down some of those terms so we can make everyone feel loved, right? And again, the reason why is because if we use some of those terms, we can really turn people away. And they begin to feel shame or that I'm dirty in some kind of way. And if I feel shame, I'm likely not to talk to you about it again. And if people are having suicidal thoughts, right? Again, we said third leading cause, and people have them. But if we're having those thoughts and we now don't feel like we're in a safe place, or people are judging us and we can't talk about it, right? And then we can't get the help, they might keep those thoughts to themselves, and that's the scariest part. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, they had this saying that sometimes mental health providers need mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will hands down tell you that I am a product. So growing up in a home with a severe alcoholic and someone with severe mental illness, as soon as I went off to school, luckily my psychology program was like, hey, you got to do your own work here. Like, you got to make sure you're good before you go out in the community. The other really cool thing about my profession is that we actually have, and I'm not certain if within ministry, if this is the same way, but at least once a month, we have a check-in person. So let's say we had a really hard time, or we heard some really hard stories. We have that check-in person, and that check-in person has a different person. So we don't have to be each other's person. So we always have somebody to kind of keep us healthy. But absolutely, we are all human. And mental health does not, it doesn't care if you're pink, purple, if you got stripes, or any of the sorts. It does not care whatsoever. So let's talk about, how do we support this person, right? So we remember that the person who has mental illness is still a person. And it's a health condition that they have, just like they have hypertension, just if they've had diabetes or what have you, right? So if it's someone out in your community, invite them into church. Again, this isn't a mental health against church. This is church with mental health, right? So we want to do it all. It all kind of works together. And then a lot of the times too, like if you have an ear, sometimes people don't just listen. Yeah, don't try to fix their problems. I see that a lot in relationships. So usually men do, yes, absolutely. That's what I was about to say. Most of the time. So it's usually, the wife comes home and she's like, the boss did this today and this was going on. And then someone cut me off and that was 5 minutes late picking up so-and-so. And the lady at the daycare made me feel bad. And so they're going through all of this. And, all of a sudden the husband's like, well, if you would have left at so-and-so amount of time and took this route, that would have worked for you. They don't want to hear that. Right? I see you. So, but no. So the wife really just wants to get it out. Right? She just wanted to get it out. You just want to be heard. Just needed to vent, right? Yeah, we just need you to listen. Just listen, let her get it out, and she's going to be okay. Most importantly, whenever we see someone struggling, let's offer, don't just say, hey, I'm going to pray for you. Can I pray with you? Let me be here with you right now. Let's be doers, right? So again, I'm not a ministry, I'm a Christian, but let's just say right now, I want you to know that I hear you, I see you, I know what's going on right now. And that goes for our significant others too. That I think sometimes we might be kinder to someone in our church, right, that maybe we know a little bit, than we are with our spouse. You know, because we can be really close with people in the community, or, you know, the guy on the side of the road. You're like, yeah, I got an extra $5. You know, I hope you have a blessed day. And then our significant other comes home and we're just like, you need to get it together. I don't know what's going on with you today, but I'm just done with it all, right? Like, we can be so much kinder to strangers than we can be to the people that we love. And so sometimes it's okay when we see a person that's struggling to say, let me pray with you right now. And men, let your wife do that sometimes too, okay? Let her be strong for you sometimes whenever you can't be strong, because that's what you got together for. So I pulled this from a patient, and I was like, yeah, that's good stuff. Oh, I should have paid you for this session. I was like, this is pretty good. So if you want to, so he says, God didn't give me the battle of depression to prove anything to him or the world. God gives me resources to treat my depression, just as he gives resources for all my physical needs. He loves me regardless of my emotional state, right? And so that's when we start pulling things together, because again, I think sometimes Christians are so afraid, because we, as Christians, we gotta be happy, right? We gotta like invite everybody over. We gotta make tea and cookies, and when someone's sad, we're doing all these different things, and that's great. Don't get me wrong, because I'm like, my kids call me the mayor of the neighborhood, because I'm just like, hey, how's everybody doing? But it's okay. It's perfectly okay to get help when we need help, and to say something is wrong. I think I've kind of already went through this a little bit. So just really, our brain is complex. Our brain is absolutely complex. And so really, if we got into the neuroscience, serotonin, norepinephrine, dopamine, these are our three major neurotransmitters. And when one of those three things get broke one way or another, we feel it, and so do our family members. All right, so a few little things that I always suggest. Again, we don't have to talk about medications, but things that we can do is breathing techniques when we're feeling completely overwhelmed. It's amazing how much our breath can actually control our entire body. And so if you just take a minute and breathe in your nose, count to 5 if you can, breathe it out, you feel completely calm in your body, right? Like, you can actually feel that. So God gave us all these new ways, right? Like he's teaching our bodies. Like, he created this complex thing. Like, he's going to give us the resources that we need to be able to treat it, right? At night, especially my ladies, at night you're thinking about, how did my day go? Did I get this right? What do I need to do? Is dinner ready? Did I get the grocery list together? You know, so-and-so called me. Did I say the right thing to them? Right? I need to get this and that done tomorrow. Guess what? You don't need to be thinking about that at night, because now you're not going to sleep. Believe it or not, get you a thought book, put it next to the bed. Write down all those things that you're thinking about. It's going to be there. No one's taking your thought book in the morning. It's so going to be there. You can get up and you can read about that so you can rest at night. This is part of sleep hygiene. Sleep is so important to our health, our mental health, our energy levels, all the above. When we don't sleep well, we do not feel well. Are you really smiley and friendly when you don't sleep at night? Not at all, right? Cranky, right? We're cranky. And then who are we cranky to? Exactly. We're right. And our family is usually the people that get the brunt of it. Our loved ones are the ones that get the brunt of it. We don't typically show our ugly to the outsiders. We show it to the people, right? Time management strategies are incredibly important to help manage, especially more anxiety, because if we're rushing all the time, of course we're feeling overwhelmed. I'm a big component. The World Health Organization actually conducted a study that says that there are 30 to 70 minutes of exercise at least 3 to 4 times a week. And they have a dose in there. It's called a moderate dose. And what they did is they compared these levels of exercise to low dose of medications that we use to treat anxiety and depression called SSRIs. And what they found is those low dose of SSRIs compared to the exercise was equivalent. Yeah, absolutely equivalent. So if we, yeah, go. I heard, no. Yeah, so if we're moving our bodies, again, God's giving us what we need to do sometimes to make ourselves better. Like our bodies know how to treat it. So exercise is huge. I'm training for a half marathon right now. I've been running for a long time. I can tell you the days that I don't run, I'm tired. I definitely don't usually have this much energy this late at night. I can tell you that much. So definitely exercise can help us sleep better. It helps control anxiety and depression. And we actually have a study to prove that, which is really nice, right? Other things, I put prayer with meditation. So we're learning to kind of take a little bit of time for ourselves. We learn how to manage those thoughts. And tons of research definitely proves that. I threw aromatherapy in there because I actually really like it. And then different herbal teas sometimes can help kind of just calm the body down when it comes to anxiety. So I couldn't get this video to work, which is really, it's called, and I think I'm running out of time, but it's called Barbershop Confessions. It's like 10 minutes long. I won't bother anybody with it. But it's really good because it actually shows kind of to your point of what you were talking about is like nobody really talked about why we're acting this way because we didn't know that it wasn't normal, right? Like you never know that something's abnormal until you know what normal is. And so this young man has started this really cool thing where he goes to all the different barbershops now across the United States, and he starts actually having those conversations about what mental health is like, and to start getting and helping people get help. And then here's my world health. I think the rest of the slides were just kind of like give me's, and I wanted to create just an opportunity for anyone to ask me any questions. I will give a disclaimer. I've done a few talks and everyone's like, do you think this is a good dose? This is what my doctor put me on. I can't do that. That's malpractice. Robin Williams gets into all of my presentations. He's actually someone who had brain changes. He had a condition called Lewy body dementia, which is a type of dementia that can form with Parkinson's disease, but it's changes on the brain that happens before Parkinson's. So he's another one who developed depression. Happy guy, right? He's a comedian. But depression started coming as he got a little bit older. And unfortunately, he did lose his life to suicide as well. But any questions about resources in our community, symptoms, anything that I said that I can answer for you? Yeah. Huge, absolutely. Most of the time, some of my biggest population usually 50 plus, who maybe had a 20-year marriage, and it was, because one, domestic abuse wasn't talked about. And then if we want to add an extra layer, statistically speaking, we certainly weren't talking about it in African American communities. Not at all. Like it wasn't happening, right? And so absolutely, any type of spousal abuse, anytime you feel uncomfortable in your own skin, and your home is your sanctuary. That's your safe place, right? This is a place I get to go in and feel comfortable and loved. I'm decorated anywhere I want. I can dress any way I want, right? All that's your safe place. And when that gets taken away from you, absolutely. And that becomes harder with relationships now, right? Because I trusted that first person. I trusted them. Can I actually trust people? Like, I trusted that person. How do I keep having trust? How do I trust myself if I keep making those same decisions? And it impacts intimacy and companionship. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's difficult to say,
Yeah.
No. Growing up in a city environment, at some level, you have some form of PTSD, especially in the Black community.
Yeah.
Because that was normal. But I think for this generation, resources for young people, you look at, we talked about this in men's ministry, or I brought this up for young people, was Facebook and social media. There's a completely different element that are attacking our young people, our young girls. And, one thing that, at least as parents, we've had a conversation is, when do you introduce your toddler to a tablet? Because once they become hooked on these devices, they become, now,
It's
innocent.
Well, it's an addiction. You can look at the DSM. It's an addiction now. It is added to our disease process. It is an addiction. Absolutely.
So I think, any resources that can come from young people, because we know that, when Facebook did go down and Instagram went down and Twitch went down, that it was actually peace there. No one could get everyone had down screen time. But these organizations, these corporations are now, in fact, profiting or monetizing off of toxicity. Right?
100%. Yeah. What sells?
Right.
What sells? Violence, right? Oppression.
My mom retired as a Detroit public school teacher, and she went back and she recognized depression in second graders and third graders during the pandemic. That's unprecedented, right? So
Absolutely.
We have to, this was an amazing presentation.
Thank you.
And you have to take breaths and reach out and make this a part of the Literacy Academy that have healthy conversations to recognize
Depression, absolutely. We've had a couple of my partners, unfortunately, over the pandemic, I personally know of 6 death by suicides in our teens. And that was just over the last year. That's our teenagers. These are from age 12. It is one of the second leading causes from 12 to 25, right? So we're seeing depression in our kids. I mean, the pandemic clearly puts it on there, but depression 100% is Facebook, especially our young girls. I mean, I need to look like that, and I don't really look like that.
And the World Health Organization finally recognized burnout as a real medical condition.
Absolutely.
August
August was the highest month that people quit their jobs. Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Do you think the slow dismantling of the nuclear family as we see it in the nation has contributed greatly to a lot of the things you're talking about?
Oh, absolutely. 100%, right? Absolutely. Because when we're not really treating root causes and we start avoiding what the real problems are, that's whenever we start to see, people having multiple children with multiple women, whenever we see dad's not around anymore, whenever we see mom addicted to what have you, of whatever might be going on, right? Like when we're not really, and if I said I had the answer, boy, I'd be a millionaire, let me tell you. Because it's so multi-layered, right? From social media to all of that, like we're starting, clearly this pandemic has not been easy. There's been death. there's no way that no one in here hasn't told me that they've been impacted in one way or another, or known of someone who's lost their life, or what have you. And then when we start putting grief, we keep putting pain in different things. Like we said, we're less likely to really be vulnerable with the people that we love, right? We're less likely to be patient with the people that we love. And most of the time, that's when these relationships start kind of falling apart. You know, when we lose people close to us, absolutely.
Well, I just wanted to say I do really appreciate this evening and having this conversation. It's so
Thank you.
unspoken and talked about, but and also in the encouragement of talking to a counselor. To your point, you know, a lot of times, maybe not even on the onset of mental health, but not talking through circumstances,
Sure.
situations, and then they just accumulate. So then it boils into
Yes.
the
You're
type of mental health.
right on.
These little small increments are not being addressed.
Yeah.
Like the root cause.
Yeah. No, you're 100% correct, right? It's like these little things. Well, I'm a strong woman, so you know what? I've got to keep it together for my family, so I'm gonna hold it in a little bit more, and that's all right. I can keep this together a little bit more, and I'm gonna keep this together a little bit more, and to where it's like a water balloon that the water just hasn't been turning off to a point of, right, it just, and then it's like shut down, right? It's like I built it up, and now I don't want to deal with anything anymore, right? I can't deal with anything anymore because I can't put anything else more on my plate. But if you know, with therapy, I've you know, again, I've done my own therapy, and I have worked with some phenomenal therapists. I am not a trained therapist. Clearly, from the medical perspective, but absolutely, if you can connect with the right therapist, but it does take, it takes a level of trust, right? You have to be able to, wherever, and especially in my profession, and I tell people that all the time that are nervous to meet me, is wherever in any other profession, did I 100% already gain your trust? Like all of a sudden you're going to sit in my chair and tell me all your woes and your worries, and I'm not going to judge you. Like you have to trust that, right? Like you have to trust the medical team. You have to be able to trust that person and be able to be vulnerable and to open up. But if we can really get to those root issues, and you might not know what they are.
And those opportunities previously didn't exist in the Black community to reach out to a licensed therapist.
No.
Usually the church, you were depending on, again, pray this out of you, right?
Right.
Your pastor.
But let's pray with you. You can still pray with you.
Hey, my dad.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
In your practice, do you see any discernible difference between people that have a strong faith and people that don't?
Yes, absolutely. So 2 thoughts on that. The one particular pastor that I've been working with, it has taken me, again, I'm not a therapist. I'm just very patient. It has taken me, he had a history of childhood trauma, unfortunately. And usually males will be less likely to talk about any kind of sexual abuse that goes on. And they'll carry that with them because they have shame. And I can't tell anybody about that because I'm a strong man and I can't do this. So I prayed about it and I got forgiveness and I forgave this person in my heart. So this particular pastor, that's kind of his story, it took me a year to finally convince him that it was okay, because he had his own bias. Like he kept coming to me, but he had his own bias that he was the pastor and he shouldn't be taking medication. But he had done his work in therapy. He had been doing everything he needed to be doing. But with PTSD, it's actually one of the health conditions that on specialized PET exams, we can actually see. I don't know if you guys ever watched YouTube or whatever, and they use these PET scans that have different colors on them. And it's one of the few that we can actually see there are brain changes. That's why sometimes we can't just talk ourselves out of it. And so, but what I can say, that PTSD and so forth, so sometimes Christians are a little bit harder to kind of coax a little bit because still there's that bias there. But for my non-faith believers, those are the ones I'll have to tell you in all full disclosure that there's certainly a higher suicide rate. There's certainly the depression, the hopelessness is definitely worse because where's their hope? What are they looking to? Was that your question? Yeah.
The time for one more, Carlos.
No, I was just gonna piggyback on something you said, the trust when you see a therapist.
Yes.
So I had a recent incident where I'm seeing a mental health therapist at the VA hospital for depression, general depression.
Yeah.
So they transferred him. They opened up a CBOC clinic out in Chesapeake.
Mm-hmm.
So they moved him from the main hospital in Hampton out there. So they told me, well, you're gonna get a new. I was like, no.
You're like,
I don't want
no.
it. So they said, well, you have no other choice. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So I went to the patient advocate
Good.
and said, look, I don't want to see nobody else. I trust this guy. I've been
Yes.
seeing him for 3 years. I wanted to deal with him.
Mm-hmm.
So they called him up and said, can you take another caseload on one of the old patients? He said, absolutely. Mr. Carlos, yes, bring him on.
Absolutely. Because you don't ever want to have to retell your story.
That's it.
Yeah, it was hard enough the first time. And then you have to turn around and redo it all over again? Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you from the absolute bottom of my heart. Mental health is certainly one of my core pieces, and it's so important that I can marry my faith and mental health at the same time. So thank you guys very much for that.
Thank you.
Was that awesome or what? All right. Now that we